we as a business are always looking to try to attract the best people for the job. And we do that in a number of ways. We advertise in the right places, and that's both the actual jobs we're working on in some instances, but also we try to produce literature. We produce podcasts. We do things which might educate audiences, interest them, get into conversation and really build our personal networks. We really focus on our consultants being experts in their fields.
Welcome to the All in Recruitment podcast by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify to stay tuned for our weekly episodes. My name is Lydia, and our guest today is Tom Gowing of Morgan Phillips Group. Great to have you with us today, Tom.
Great to be here, Lydia.
So, Tom, tell us a little bit about your journey towards becoming MD of the group.
Yeah, sure. So I started in recruitment in 2006, I think it was, so quite a long time ago. And I started for a FTSE recruiter and in one of their regional offices, recruiting accountants. So that was kind of like a lot of people just started to do that. And over a few years, got to manage that office and then moved to London after a few years for sort of the bigger opportunities that would offer. I remained at that group for just over 10 years and sort of was a director there, recruited lawyers, accountants for the most part. The opportunity came up to join Morgan Phillips, at the time Hudson. And then so I joined those guys and recruited HR professionals to begin with. And then over the years, just took on more responsibility. Morgan Phillips purchased Hudson, and that's really where my opportunity to do more came up. So as I've recruited in different areas over my career, when the opportunities arose to look after those divisions, I was able to take that opportunity and do so. So most recently, in recent years, I have sort of been able to sort of go up through the business and now run the Morgan Phillips Specialist Recruitment brand within the UK. So we recruit mid to senior level positions across a number of different areas, such as marketing, legal, sales, technology, and data, and HR. So yeah, that's kind of a very short potted history of how I've ended up where I am.
It's quite a journey. 2006 towards now, you would have seen so many changes in the market as well, right? And within the business as within the whole industry.
Yeah, the industry particularly. It's changed a lot since 2006 when, LinkedIn wasn't really a thing. So, if you wanted to know where a candidate went, you had to ring them and ask them where they were. And then you had to update your database. LinkedIn does, you wake up in the morning to an email from LinkedIn to give that information now. So, yeah, it's quite a change. It's certainly a journey. And certainly with Morgan Phillips, I think, we're quite a forward thinking business and try to use as much sort of digital and data as possible. And so I think the pace of change that we've found in certain recent years has been, really, really quite quick.
Absolutely. And so as MD, how do you identify and prioritize these key industry trends that have potential impact to your firm's growth and success even?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think, recruiters have always had quite a privilege in terms of you speak to people in your market, you speak to your candidates, you speak to your clients. And so I think those that have made a career from it have had to adapt and realize that, you need to listen to what you're being told. And also you need to offer that information as well. So I've always tried to think of us as a business as sitting at the center of what's effectively a lot of information. So we speak to our clients, we speak to our customers, and we hear what they're telling us. And we also work out what's going on in our own industries. So I think in terms of, that it's important that we look at what we're being told and we then work out from that what the industry trends are going to be, because we're often at the forefront of seeing those things. So I think really it's about making sure that you're in touch with your market, you're in touch with your candidates and your clients, and you're listening to what they have to tell you. And then really it's about making the right decisions around what you do next. So I don't feel it's an exact science. It's something you learn over time. But more recently, I think trends have not always been the same. I've worked through, unfortunately, recessions previously and COVID, and they've never been the same. 2008, the recession was financial. So we found that, it was the finance leaders that were ones that got businesses through that period of time. COVID was very different. Clearly, finances were affected, but that was also a kind of that was very people crisis. We couldn't leave our homes. So things had to change in that regard. So again, I found, sometimes it was a combination, but often it was the HR side to the leadership that were having to make the big strides forwards to help businesses grow at that point. So you hear all of this and you have to sort of assimilate the information and try to act as best you can on it, really.
And the intervals within these disruptions are getting shorter and shorter, I suppose. And what sort of, how's the reaction towards these things? And is there a proactive?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's proactive. You've got to, I think anyone in recruitment was lying if they said in March of 2020 with COVID, they were sat there thinking, yeah, this will be okay. I think everyone had that moment where they thought, oh, this is going to be, what is going to happen? The world's imploding here. If you really want to think about it, particularly if you're a recruiter working in the UK in a kind of regional market or a London market, you would rarely place people without them having met the client face to face. It wasn't a regular occurrence. It was the minority of the opportunities you'd work on where perhaps you were bringing someone from abroad, or if you worked in international market. So there was a massive shift just in that regard. But what amazed me was how quick it happened. People reacted very quickly. People pivoted very quickly and started to, act accordingly. And although it was a very tough period and clearly not something that anyone would want to repeat, I think some of the stuff we'll talk about later brings this home. But some of the changes have been actually after the hardship's over, quite positive. And I think will be around for a long time.
Now, you talked about making sure that you're constantly in touch with the clients to understand what the trends would be that would affect both your firm as well as the client. So building building those relationships is absolutely vital. So how do you ensure that your firm delivers top-notch service to both clients as well as the candidates that you bring in?
Yeah, I think it's a fairly straightforward answer to that one. I think you've got to, in this industry, realise it's entirely people-led. So you've got to place your client and your candidate at the centre of everything you do. So every decision you take, whether that is a very small daily decision or whether that is a more significant strategic one, you've got to think about how that's going to impact on either the client or the candidate or indeed both. And you've got to take the decision based on that's going to make the experience better or faster or more efficient. It's got to satisfy all of those criteria. And I think if you do that, then you probably won't go too far wrong. You won't get it right all the time. But I think so long as you're looking at things and making sure that you're doing it for the right reasons and to give a better service to your customers, if you want to call your clients and your candidates just generally customers, I think that's what you've got to do.
Now, in the different fields that you've also looked at, these are traditional fields as well as technology. Yes. And in technology, you've got plenty of different niche roles and niche sort of requirements that you need to attract people for. So when it comes to attracting passive candidates, Tom, what are perhaps some strategies or best practices that you've found particularly effective?
Yeah, we as a business are always looking to try to attract the best people for the job. And we do that in a number of ways. We advertise in the right places, and that's both the actual jobs we're working on in some instances, but also we try to produce literature. We produce podcasts. We do things which might educate audiences, interest them, get into conversation and really build our personal networks. We really focus on our consultants being experts in their fields. So we'd like to think that a client or a candidate can speak to one of our team about their career or the person they need to hire and actually talk to someone who knows what they're talking about and can offer them real life advice. And therefore we hope that, those candidates we work with will be our clients later down the line, and vice versa. Our clients may become our candidates as well. We have some, more unique things. So we also have something called the Club 5000. So that's a group of professionals that we invite to join the club. And for that, we do networking events, we produce white papers, we offer various different sort of benefits, I suppose you could say, monthly newsletters, things like this. Really, it's aimed at sort of mid but more senior level leaders to try to sort of create an environment whereby they can network and meet like-minded people and discuss topics and so on and so forth. And then from time to time, we'll identify some of those leaders as possibly people who could maybe refer or recommend people within their network to us. And therefore building a professional network outside of your more traditional things like LinkedIn, things like this. So it's something that we control, but also it's really valuable because actually what we've found is that we take time to cultivate those relationships with those people. and we value it very much, and we hope they do. And so when we ask, look, we're working on a particularly interesting opportunity within this sector, we then approach the people we know within the club from that sector, and they'll maybe put it in front of someone they know, or so on and so forth. So it's a means of us gaining some referral, but also building out a network of people where there's a mutual benefit there.
Yeah, an experience within the community, so to speak, and something that can grow organically and also be beneficial to the business.
Absolutely. I mean, not to say that's also an important thing. I think so regularly that I think our industry gets tarnished with this brush of it's more take. We want our candidates, we want the jobs, and absolutely our role is to fill roles. That's what we're here to do. But I think really, if you do need to take time to actually sort of try to offer something back as well to your candidates and your clients, because otherwise really it becomes a less two-way relationship and more transactional. Where we found greater success is where we've built long-term lasting relationships with people that benefits them in all forms of their professionalism, as well as us as a business growing as well.
And that's a great example of a long-term strategic investment. This is an investment of time and effort and
it is.
and people, in fact. So how do you balance short-term financial goals with long-term strategic investments such as this, so that you ensure that there's a sustainable growth for your recruitment?
Yeah, I guess it depends when you ask me. But no, I mean, seriously, no, I think it sort of goes back to what I was saying. We will always be investing in those longer term relationships where we can. Mm-hmm. The realities are at times, we will do, we sometimes work for clients and we do a piece of work for them and not frequent recruiters. And that's, we kind of do the job and we move on. That's the reality. I think my role is really to make sure that my team in the UK have got all the tools available to them to mean they can, go out into their markets confidently, speak to their customers and find the best people. And I think if we do that consistently enough, I think we'll be able to satisfy both those things, because, every month this is a sales role. It's a sales industry. So every month you've got a number to hit, every quarter you've got a number to hit, and every year. But when you need to take the time sometimes to look back over those months and quarters and years and realize the things you were doing along the way that have contributed to where the business is in the here and now. I should have probably before this worked out some sort of percentage, but I wouldn't have a clue. I should think I'd probably spend maybe 20% of my time thinking kind of longer term, and then probably more like 80% thinking about the kind of, the foreseeable few months in future.
In technology, as you rightly said, your team needs the tools in order to be able to go out and achieve these goals, right? So technology, as we all know, has significantly impacted all industries, including the recruitment landscape. So how does your firm, embrace these changes for the recruitment and consulting process?
Yeah, I mean, technology has changed the way people do so many different things. Recruitment has been hugely impacted. I think it's maybe an area that I think people felt, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that, AI would come along and we'd all end up, having to work and do something different. And that hasn't really been the case. I think recruiters by their nature are quite good at changing and pivoting around into what they do and turning, a technology that could effectively, make us extinct into something that actually, just makes us more efficient. LinkedIn's a great example. 10 years ago, I expect boardrooms in recruitment firms across the city were probably panicked about the idea that there was effectively this big database online where everyone would be able to see everything. Because I worked in the times when you'd go in and you talk about your database and how big it was and how many people you had on it, and it mattered. So I think going back to your question, you need people to have the right tools. But I think one of the misconceptions about all the tools, particularly around AI at the moment, is I hear a lot of people talk about making life easier, like, this could make life so much easier. I think maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it. I think you probably need to think about the technology and the AI tools out there at the moment is to allow people to do more, make efficiencies, improve, not just make life easier. I don't think if your aim is to make life easier, I think you may be looking at it in the wrong way. We try to give our guys the tools to maximize their opportunities rather than necessarily just save them time. So I think that if you kind of, again, keep at the heart of your decision making around what you use, I think you probably can't go too far wrong. But it is exciting to see what's around the corner. because I do think there's going to be some technologies coming out very soon, which could really turn things kind of on their head in some respects.
And one of the biggest draws from technology has to be data, right? Today, it's all data-driven decision making, and it's a mandatory sort of element within the decision making process in any business. So, what's the approach at Morgan Phillips towards using data and analytics to make strategic decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I suppose internal and external, but I mean particularly externally for our clients. A part of our business, we have a talent management team. Mm-hmm. So in the UK, we have them also across Europe as well. So they will work with businesses on development of their future leaders, perhaps, or their leaders, but of a complete range of different tools. But that's all data. That's all data driven. And so what we also offer as part of the recruitment service is we can put people through various forms of, for want of a better word, and they hate me using the word, but tests, psychometrics, but developed specifically by ourselves to measure a number of different facets in people, driven by what level they're at and the type of role they're looking to fulfill. And we often, within perhaps more mid to senior level mandates, will incorporate those into the recruitment process. And what we found with clients is if it's a particularly pivotal role or quite specific, or indeed leadership, or a role that they feel the person could be a future leader, putting data behind these decisions. And we're talking, it's not just opinion. It's not, so-and-so from HR likes, and what do you think? It's way beyond that. Putting data behind those decisions has proven to be, very, very successful.
Now, privacy and data security are equally critical concerns as well today's digital age, right? So how do you ensure candidate information is safeguarded throughout this process?
Yeah, so you're right, it's pivotal, and everyone has to be aware of it now. So I mean, I suppose we use a number of different things as all businesses will. Just to list a few: single sign-on, multi-factor authentications. Our data is hosted in a certified sort of government-approved secure data center. Clearly, we have adapted all the necessary and beyond necessary GDPR policies. That's both locally in the UK as well as globally, where different applicable, different GDPR obviously doesn't apply everywhere, but different things apply in different places. So different jurisdictions for us have different requirements, which we adhere to. I say it sounds ridiculous, but to get into our systems, you need a username and password. I know that sounds obvious, but it's everywhere. Our access rights are audited, regularly. So we're making sure that that's remains correct. And we also have our own in-house monitoring, as well as external third-party sort of intrusion detection, if you will. It's a shame, but I suppose it's just part of the landscape now that you have to be so careful, and particularly when dealing with people's personal data. So yeah, we take it very seriously, but also take an awful lot of precaution around it as well.
No, absolutely, because it's we're also looking at, since COVID especially, which has accelerated remote work and the gig economy. People working, it's a decentralized workforce essentially, right? So we're looking at a rise of remote work, gig economy, and how has your recruitment approach adapted to these changing preferences of for both clients and candidates? This is moving into the preferences instead of the security part.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, if you'd asked me 6 months or a year ago, my answer probably would have been quite different. I think we're probably going into an era now where businesses are moving back to maybe more of a hybrid model. And that was something that 6 months or 12 months ago, you still found a lot of people working very remotely. I think initially, post-COVID, everything was turned on its head. So you suddenly found that technology is a good example. Technology skill sets are hard to find in most jurisdictions, but UK particularly. So removing all of the geographical requirements meant you suddenly had a pool of candidates from a much wider area. Now, that was fantastic because it meant you could talk to more people about your opportunities and so on. But now in this new world, whereby actually businesses now realise that collaboration is really important, and they want people in the office, and they want people working together. Actually, it's now meant that you in some instances have people who have taken jobs in London who maybe live anywhere in the country. So it's a bit of a moving feast at the moment. I would say it's overall been a real positive. Business flexibility is obviously much higher. I mean, just from a personal perspective, for example, I think I'd worked from home, 3 times in my career before COVID. I mean, mostly because I liked the office environment. I liked going in. I liked the sort of the learning, the camaraderie, being around people, all that sort of stuff. That was really good. And I'd done it maybe, I could have worked at home. We had the technology, but I just hadn't done. And then to go to, and I was by no means any different to, I think, a lot of people in the staffing industry. You go to COVID and suddenly everyone's at home, and it turned it completely on its head. I think now people probably value the flexibility in able to be, at home from time to time. But I also think, from speaking to a lot of people, they do like the going in, the learning from your colleagues, the speaking, the social aspects and so on of being in an office environment. And I actually think maybe, I mean, I've been to hundreds of offices in my time to visit different clients. And I must admit now, it's almost like a bit of a battleground. The office has suddenly become a really important place to have, needs to be somewhere that encourages people to, work collaboratively. And so even with you're working from home more, but then the office environment is different because of the fact people have the opportunity to work from home. So it's an interesting one. And I don't think it's over yet. I mean, certainly speaking to our colleagues in Europe, it seems that they've returned much more to an office environment. The UK seemed to be hanging on maybe more, maybe a bit harder to the idea of working from home more. But it's interesting. I think it will continue to change over the next 6, 12, 18 months.
Now, going into the different strategic initiatives that we've had for your firm and the newer things that are probably in the pipeline, how do you assess the success and the effectiveness of these initiatives?
Yeah, that can be really difficult. I think we can put data behind that and work out, there's simple, there's maths, isn't there? You can work out, look, I did this and we did this particular activity. Off the back of it, we made these contacts and then we've worked on these opportunities subsequent. So you can but actually I think it's a much broader question than that. But it's equally a very difficult thing to work out exactly. So I think, again, it probably goes back to my point. I think we try to place entirely importance on the candidate and the client experience. And so we will always be doing things that make our clients' lives better, easier, and the same for our candidates. And therefore, if we're finding that the feedback we're getting from our customers is that that's working, then we'll look at improving further upon that. I think sometimes what you're not told is probably the most valuable. So if you're not getting it, but we ask for feedback quite regularly from people to find out what it is that works for them. But I mean, a good example is that our talent guys, for example, everything was done in assessment centres previously. Now with COVID, you can't do that. So we had to respond very quickly to the market, and they were able to pivot. And we've gone, we went down an almost entirely digital sort of road with that. And now we're finding that actually customers saying, well, actually, although we like the digital approach, could we combine it with some in-house, in-person stuff as well? So we've done that. So you've just got to be flexible, and you've got to listen to those. But you listen to your customers and your candidates and make sure that you're reacting to what it is that they want. But it's a long-winded answer. But it's difficult. It's really hard to know. It's really hard to know. But I think if you have that, yeah. Sorry,
go ahead. No, it just sounds like it's a constant process of discovery, especially post-COVID. We're not entirely settled yet, and every region has its own pattern.
Definitely, that's it. I don't know. I think it was an American businessman years ago who said something along the lines of, half the money you spend on advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half. And that kind of sums it up. I think within business, particularly an area that recruitment works, moves so quickly, you're doing so many initiatives at any one time. You do have to sometimes stop and work out which ones are working and which ones aren't, and not be caught in the trap of going, well, we've always done this, so we should do it again. Try to mix these up and do things differently. But going back to that example where we digitize stuff for the talent business, and now to do some things that are more kind of hybrid, I suppose you'd call it. That was purely because at the time, previously, it was all going to be done in a classroom type environment. Then it couldn't be, so it had to be done. And now we're in a place where actually, what is it people want? Well, people want a combination, so that's what we're doing. So it's, you just have to apply that kind of principle to everything, really, if you can.
Yeah, and now you have an option. You can choose either one, or you can combine the tools, and that's to everyone's advantage.
Yeah, and the technology supports it as well. You don't have to be tech. I think we're probably in a world where, if you want to, the technology is there to support you doing pretty much anything. Doesn't mean you should, but you've got lots of opportunities. So there's no excuse for not changing and not assessing your options and keep on trying to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, an experimental mindset, but at the same time also execution.
Absolutely, yeah.
So looking ahead, Tom, what excites you the most about the future of recruitment? And, we've covered AI and we're still seeing the benefits or the disruption that we're seeing with AI and how everything has become elevated in terms of the role of a recruiter as well. But what's your opinion about the future of recruitment, and what's the most exciting thing?
Yeah, I suppose you probably break that into two. I think probably artificial intelligence is clearly going to be, it is already probably the feature of the landscape at the moment, and I think will continue to be. I think people have written off recruitment a couple of times with LinkedIn and stuff like this. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere per se, but I think it'll be very different. I think what excites me, probably the pace at which we're able to change as a business and try new things and develop new products and go to market and engage with our customers in a different way. That's never been faster. And I think that's really exciting. I think the ability to more effectively help more businesses find the best people and help people find, the job that's ideal for them. I think that's, I suppose for me, why I went into recruitment in the first instance. And I don't think fundamentally that's shifted 17-ish years on. But the scale at which you can do it now and the pace at which you can do it is entirely different. So I think that's exciting. I think the thing that will be the challenge with all of that will be making sure that the human element isn't lost. And I think that amongst all of the digitalization of things and the technologies that are available, I do think that the recruiters for some time will have a place because we can provide that human touch, that human element to what we do. And I think at Morgan Phillips, that's probably where we try to find ourselves at that crossroads between we want to be innovative, digital, and technology driven, whilst also a human touch there to mean that, we provide a level of service that is, better than something that can be provided by AI effectively.
And community building being one of those things that ensures
absolutely
that touch, right? How old is it, by the way, the community that you've built? I mean, when did it start?
Well, it was when Hudson was bought by Morgan Phillips, it existed then. So it's, to my knowledge, at least 5 years in the making. So our owners, the Charles Henry, who's the CEO, is been within the staffing industry for probably more years than he'd like me to mention, but long time, and has worked. So he's quite a visionary when it comes to the next ideas, and I think this is something that he'd wanted to do for a while. And so when he started Morgan Phillips, it was something that he brought in really quickly because he wanted that, that senior network. And to our knowledge, I'm sure there's companies out there that do similar. I think, to my knowledge, I think it's probably almost unique. Not maybe not entirely, but as close as you can probably get.
Thank you very much, Tom, for your time and your insights. It's been extremely valuable and generous of you to share all this information with us and your knowledge.
No problem.
So drop us your contact details for perhaps the audience listening in would want to take a conversation.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. If anyone wants to sort of pick up a conversation, then feel free to email me. So that's tom.gowing@morganphillips.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you, Lydia. Cheers.
And we have been in conversation with Tom Gowing from Morgan Phillips Group. Thank you for joining us, and remember to subscribe for more weekly episodes from All in Recruitment.